May be seated. Oh, yeah. Realizing this, is this what they call SpongeBob? That Bob put that there? Isn't there a movie or something called SpongeBob or something?
Okay, moving on.
Well, let's see what we have. Yes, the Alethea Christian College camp. It seems like it's a long way on. That's the 13th of July. That's just like next month. 4 weeks. It's amazing. Did you also know what happens on the July 15th? Taxes. This year they extended it from April 15th. I had a sudden panic attack. I thought, oh, it's June 15th. No, it's July 15th. So maybe for a camp, I guess we'll have to make sure you file your taxes. All right. Did anybody want to say anything about camp or? Did you?
We're getting a lot of interest.
Yeah, there's. We're sure that they're gonna. Have we checked with the people that run the camp that they're gonna allow us to be there and stuff, or?
Not exactly.
We're not gonna have to do this separation business and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
We are.
yeah, boys, typical. Boys on
Oh,
one
yes,
side.
that's right, okay. Boys on one side, girls on the other side. That's social distancing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're socially distanced. Look at us. There's lots of cameras. You can have 2 or 3 people.
I told him, when we were talking, we were having our little camp meeting this week. I don't want to go up and clean that whole campground the same day we start camp. So if we're the only one up there this summer, I'm gonna tell Jason we're gonna do a free Saturday or something, and go up and clean it.
So you're saying that there's nobody else that's gonna be running the camp?
As far as that, my last conversation with Jason, everyone canceled.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I remember that there was quite a few times that we were the first ones there, and it's quite short. We don't get a reduction, do we? But you know, we're always good, you know, when we go there, we clean up previous people, and the camp is always cleaner when we leave. I think that they appreciate that. Even if they don't show appreciation in Europe, by giving us money. We are storing the treasures in heaven, a cleaning camp. Every louster that we remove from the dishes. All right. Does anybody else have any other announcements? Oh, yes, there's going to be an Alethea Christian College board meeting tomorrow. Prayer
It's a board meeting, right?
7 o'clock here at the church.
Yes.
Everybody's invited
What day is that?
tomorrow. And if you thought that the Mexico Evangelical Preacher board meeting was exciting, wouldn't you come to the ACC one?
Yeah, we didn't even have a meeting, we just looked at a house.
And that's, probably as far as I know, it's the deal with volunteer.
But that is, God,
Yeah, I prayed that same morning, and then my brother told me that afternoon, told me I had to volunteer.
I said to God, thank you.
All right, does anybody else have any other announcements that they would make at this time?
Well, I just want you to pray for me because all my joints hurt during when the weather changes. The weather, you know, the temperature going up and down 30 degrees and stuff.
Well, you know, we'll do something special. Judy's supposed to do the big prayer,
Okay,
but I'll pray for you right now.
okay.
And then she can pray for you again, and before you leave the church, you'll be surprised how good you feel. Right, our Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We just thank you for this beautiful day that we have, another day that you've given us to come here, to worship you, to praise you, to learn about your word, to pray for each other. Father, I just pray that you will put your hand of healing on Nancy, that you will heal her joints. Father, we all suffer things at times. And this is a time of changing weather, and it really has an adverse effect on her. Father, we just pray that you will help her alleviate the pain, either by acting on her joints or acting on weather. Father, we just thank you for Nancy and all the faithful years that she's been part of this church. We just thank you for all the people that come here. We pray that you'll continue to bless us with good health and with the means that we have to live. Father, we're so thankful for all the things that you've given us. We just ask your special blessing on Nancy. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, well, let's continue with the song. Let's pray over the tithes and the offerings. God our Father, we just thank you. Father, we just thank you for these tithes and these offerings. Father, we just ask that you accept this small offering as token of our appreciation of the things that you've already given us. Father, we know that everything is yours, and we try to be good stewards and give some back to you so that you can spread your word here in Jerome and in Idaho and the rest of the world. And Father, we just thank you for all the things that you've blessed us. We just thank you for the jobs that we have so that we can take care of our own families, our friends, and our church, and our neighbors. And Father, just ask that you continue to bless us so that we can give even more. And Father, we just thank you for all the things that you've given us. We thank you most of all for sending Jesus to die for us. Father, we just ask that you bless us, to continue to bless us in his precious name. Amen.
You know, my husband's gone right now. He went four-wheeling with his sister and family and friends, and so Roxy and I have been alone, having to do all the stuff Joe usually does, and some of it's kind of unpleasant, like Catherine puts offerings, and gotta watch out for where she puts them. So anyway, I was watching TV. You know, God is Lord of all, and you have choices. You know, and I was watching TV, and I'm getting all stressed out and worried about stuff. And somebody the other day, I don't know who I was talking to, it might have been Diane, but they said, we were talking about something, they said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. And I said, yes, I do. That's my job. I have been worrying about people since I was a little girl. You know, if they weren't with me, then they were lost somewhere. And if they were with me, they were okay. It didn't matter if we were all lost. As long as I knew where they were, it was okay, right? Well, as you get older and your people are in various places and not with you, and you still worry, but you have a choice. And so I turned the TV channel, and I went to the Hallmark channel. You know that one always is wonderfully, and so you have to look at it. But still, they were making choices. You know, it's always the same story. The young girl falls in love, but he has to go here because this is what he wants to do, and they're over here, and this is what they want him to do. And in the end, there is somewhere in the middle that, you know, if we wait for God to give us an answer, you know, maybe this isn't right or this isn't right, but there is another choice. There's always another choice to make. And so I felt better after I made another choice, you know. Eventually I turned on the TV and I prayed for Joe and I prayed for us, you know, all this storm and everything that was going on last night in my sleep. And let him worry about it instead of me worrying about it, which is much more productive than, you know, let God be in charge, because he is. Okay, so let's stand and we're going to sing the song that I don't know very well, but we found the words. I think we thought and we found the words.
In Psalm 19, the King James Version.
Yeah, it's if you have the King James Old Version, it is Psalm 19:7. That's what this is. I think we're on a different song.
My first switch.
Which one are you on?
You stick with it.
Okay.
I don't have that.
You don't have that one?
That's like you know, that's all I get. Oh, Rocky.
You are holy. You are holy. Thank you for your mercy and your love. Thank you for your grace. We thank you for you love us. We thank you that we can come into your house today. Your holy sanctuary. That we can read with you. That we can be in your presence. We feel your presence with us. We love you, Lord. We praise you because you are God, not because of all you do for us, not because you created us, You deserve our praise. You deserve our worship. We thank you, Father, that you do care about us, that you do provide for us, that you watch over our loved ones, wherever they may be. That you know where they are and what they're going through. If they're lost, Lord, we know that we will find them. We lift up our loved ones that are lost, Lord, that you would find them, that you would draw them to you, that you would speak to them, that you would open their hearts and their minds so they may be saved. Lord, we lift up those that are away from home, Lord. I lift up Allison Heiser's fiance. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Lord, you know who he is and where he's at. He's with the National Guard from Idaho that's in Washington, D.C. And also I suspect my supervisor, Denise, may be there, because they've been deployed to that area. Lord, I ask you that you keep your hand on them, you keep all these people safe, you keep your hand on our police officers, our responders. Lord, I pray that you would dial this down. Lord, we need you in all these situations. We know there are problems. We know nothing is perfect. We ask you to intervene, Lord God. Intervene in the hearts and the minds of your people. Be with our president, the decisions that he makes, Lord, surrounding with wise, godly people. We pray that he would pray and seek wisdom from you, Lord God. We ask you to keep him and his family safe and healthy. And Lord, I lift up Nancy, that you would continue to touch her, Lord. You know, another that's a lot of people. So we just ask for your touch on them, Lord. And I ask you to keep your hand on Nathaniel and Rachel and the kids, and finding answers for them. Help them to be wise in the things that they choose and the people, the doctors that are taking care of them. And Lord, I also lift up Hannah and the work that she's doing, the people in her care. And I lift them up, Lord, that we would touch them and bring peace to their hearts. And Lord, I know Hannah can only talk to people as they ask. It's like my work. You have to choose your words and your timing. And Lord, help her give peace and the knowledge of you to the people she works with and the people she serves. And all of us, Lord, to open our hearts and our understanding to know what to say and when to say it, to encourage people, to bring peace to their hearts and you to their understanding. And we ask all of these things, Lord, in your name, Jesus.
I was done with James. I think I want to do one more. Use the book of James as a background to talk about some of the things that we're seeing right now. And we talk about, and I reposted something, I shared something from someone else this week, and I got such an interesting backlash from it. I thought, it's interesting to me how we're perceiving things, and so I thought I'd jump in the pool, So, but let's. I don't know. Let's read first. Isaiah. It's the first chapter of Isaiah. When you talk about justice and righteousness and that, you can almost finger dip. You know that in the Bible. It's everywhere, on almost every page. And so, especially Isaiah. You can do that with Isaiah. You just open Isaiah, flip it over, read a page, and talk about justice. And but we're not going to do that. Let's start with Isaiah 1. Let's read the whole thing. Let's read Isaiah 1. Okay. You can read, and you can all read. Okay. You want to read? Read loud. You have to stand up, okay?
The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, concerning Judah and Jerusalem, which he saw during the reign of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, the kings of Judah. Listen, O heavens, and hear, O earth, for the Lord speaks. Son I have reared and brought up, but they have revolted against me. An ox knows its owner, and a donkey its master's manager. But Israel does not know. My people do not understand. Alas, sinful nation, people weighed down with iniquity, offspring of evildoers, sons who act corruptly. They have abandoned the Lord. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. They have turned away from him. Where will you be stricken again as you continue in your rebellion? The whole head is sick. The whole heart is faint.
From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. They have not been closed or bound up or soothed with ointment. Your country is desolate. Your cities are burned with fire. Strangers devour your land in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by strangers. So the daughter of Zion is left as a booth in a vineyard, as a hut in a garden of cucumbers, as a besieged city. Unless the Lord of hosts had left to us a very small remnant, we would have become like Sodom, and we would have been made like Gomorrah.
Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom, give ear to the instruction of our God. You people of Gomorrah, what are your multiplied sacrifices to me, says the Lord. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed cattle, and I take no pleasure in the blood of bulls, rams, or goats. When you come to appear before me, who requires of you this trampling of my voice? Bring your worthless offerings no longer. Incense is an abomination to me. New moon and Sabbath, the calling of assemblies I cannot endure. Iniquity and the solemn assembly. I hate your new moon festivals and your appointed feasts. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. So when you spread out your hands in prayer, I'll hide my eyes from you. Yes, even though you multiply prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are covered with blood. Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from my sight. Cease to do evil, learn to do good. Seek justice. Reprove the ruthless. Defend the orphan. Plead for the widow.
Come now, and let us reason together, said the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat of the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. How is the faithful city become a harlot? It was full of judgment, righteousness lodged in it, but now murder. Thy silver is become dross, thy wine mixed with water. Thy princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Everyone loves gifts and followeth after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither the causes of the come to them. Therefore said the Lord of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, I will ease me of mine adversaries and avenge me of mine enemies. And I will turn my hand upon thee and purely purge away thy dross, and take away all thy sin. And I will restore thy judges as thy first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterward thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city.
Zion will be redeemed with justice, and her repentant ones with righteousness. But transgressors and sinners will be crushed together, and those who forsake the Lord shall come to an end. Surely you will be ashamed of the oaks which you have desired, and you will be embarrassed at the gardens which you have chosen. For you will be like an oak whose leaf fades away, or as a garden that has no water, and the strong will become tinder, his work also will expire. Thus they shall both burn together, and there will be none to quench them.
Let's, I have a lot of verses. Let's look at, read from James. Yaakov, and chapter 2. Actually, I want you to start, I'm going to read down to 13, but let's start with verse 26. 1:26 to chapter 2, verse 13. Okay? It's a little passage, but I'll start in chapter 1. If anyone thinks himself to be religious and yet does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this man's religion is worthless. Pure and undefiled religion in the sight of God and the Father is this: visit the orphans and the widows in their distress, and keep oneself unstained by the world.
Brothers and sisters, do you actually really believe in our glorious ultimate? Or if a person with gold rings and fine clothes comes into your assembly, and a poor person with dirty clothes also comes in, and if you take notice of the one wearing fine clothes and say, "Have a seat here, please," while to the one who is poor you say, "Stand there, sit at my feet," have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges of people's laws? Listen, my beloved brothers and sisters, has not God chosen the poor of the world to be rich in faith and to be heirs of the kingdom that he has promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who oppress you? Is it not they who drag them in court? Is it not they who blaspheme the excellent name partiality, commit sin, and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point to become accountable for all of it. For one who said, "You shall not commit adultery," also said, "You shall not murder." And if you do not commit adultery, murder is accounted transgression. So speak, so act as those who are judged by the law of liberty. The judgment will be without mercy to anyone who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment.
Father, I just want to thank you for your word on both sides of the divide here. And thank you that you've spoken to us and your word is consistent and it's true and it will change our lives. In Jesus' name. I just, in looking today and thinking about three things, there's so much in the Bible about justice that my biggest struggle was to limit the amount of stuff that I have. But we're looking at, I'm watching. Last night, I tried to pull things together, and I got to watching Thomas Sowell. And I probably watched Thomas Sowell clips until it was 2 o'clock in the morning. But he is such a brilliant man. Thomas Sowell's a black, radical Marxist from the 60s. And graduated from UCLA, Harvard, and Oxford, and University of Chicago, and in economics. But he was a Marxist all the way through, even at University of Chicago, where he studied with Milton Friedman. And asked him about that. He said, "People can be stubborn." So, but what changed his mind was he went to work for the government in Puerto Rico. And to that, his comment is government exists for its own self-interest. And it's something you have to really think about. We think about government as government is there for the interest of the public. But in Thomas Sowell's comments, he said, government does not exist for the public interest. They exist for its own self-interest. And they will never solve anything, because to solve it is to put themselves out of work, and they're not going to do that. So it's very fascinating thing to him. And it was in Puerto Rico that he figured this out. And of course, he was back at UCLA teaching during the Watts riots. And some of his comments, as he observed it, are fascinating. But I can sum up, I can sum up the whole situation according to Thomas Sowell, one of the most brilliant economists in the living today. A black man, a lot of his books in my library. Government created the crisis. And that's hard for us to understand. Why would they do that? But that's his point. Government created it. What are the main issues in economics and in social justice and that? He said family unit and education. And he said it over and over and over. When the blacks, and this is Thomas Sowell's main point, you've listened to him a lot. The crisis among the racial crisis that we're seeing today does not go back to the 19th century. It's a 20th century phenomenon. It starts in 1930s and has two peaks, 1930 and 1960. Okay, and the reason is the policies of Woodrow Wilson and FDR, and then in the 60s it was Johnson and the Great Society. And because in the 19th century, all blacks were Republican. Why? They were against slavery, absolutely. The Republican Party was created by Abraham Lincoln to remove slavery. That's why there's a Republican Party. If we didn't emancipate slaves and we didn't have Abraham Lincoln, we wouldn't have a Republican Party. It doesn't go back any earlier than so it is the party of Abraham Lincoln. So it was really interesting watching those Black Lives Matter and Antifa and Antichrist and anti-God stuff attacking the Lincoln Memorial. That's just fascinating to think about. How can you be Black Lives Matter and be attacking the Lincoln Memorial, defacing it? And if you have been confused up to this point, you shouldn't be from now on. Everything is doublespeak. Okay? You can't take anything at face value. You have to turn it around and look at it backwards. It's like you have to look at it through, a reverse lens. Because everything they say is exactly everything they're against is what they're promoting. Antifa promotes fascism. That's no question. Anybody who looks at them and watches what they do, they're a fascist organization promoting fascism. But their name is anti-fascism. You understand? Black Lives Matter are what? What's their main point? Black lives don't matter. That's what it is. When they're burning down mom and pop stores along the side, do you think they go in and check? Let's do a DNA check on this and see what kind of who's in here a lot. Who runs this place? Let's go behind the counter and do some swabs and find out, are these people black? No, they burn them all down. Just burn them all down. And then after about a week of that, then you have black people coming out and writing, "This is a black store" on the front. Did it matter a whole lot? Not really. Not really. Because they're not about Black Lives Matter. It's not what they're about. So you have to look at that really carefully. So, but in his point, and he's saying, how did they? There is a problem. Okay, here's the thing. We can't stand up. People say, "Well, you guys don't see anything." No, I see it. I understand it. I see that there is a problem in the inner city minorities. But, I saw this a long time ago. And I've known for a long time, I've known since I was a pastor on the Indian reservation, that government is behind it. It's the government policy that creates these things. Because I've got tons of psychology credit. I've got lots and lots of psychology credits. I've been to everything. I was thinking, where one of the main themes in counseling is that behavioral problems are diseases. Okay, and one of the main proof that behavioral problems are diseases is the American First Nations. Okay, their alcoholism, it's so prominent in the First Nations that that's proof that alcoholism is genetic. But if you've ever lived and worked on the Indian reservation, it's not genetic. You'll see that. How come only the boys get drunk? Girls don't get drunk. The moms, I'm not saying these are not absolute statements, these are generalities. Guys that have figured out, up in Montana, there's guys that have figured out this is a cash cow. I don't have to pay taxes. I've got all my medical paid. I've got everything paid, and I can use any land for the rest of my life for free. And they're wealthy. Why? Because they took advantage of all the free stuff and the free land, and they built businesses up and with slot machines and sold Indian artifacts and everything. Guys like that were wealthy. But there's only so many people can do that on one Indian reservation. That's kind of limited. And so, but I realized, because the women, the government, the federal government and the BI through the BIA runs the entire reservation. And houses are given out by HUD. They're built by HUD and they're given out according to a priority of things. They have a list of things. And you have to have so many dependents in that. And for X number of dependents, you get a house. You want 3 bedrooms, you got to have more kids. And if you want more money, you also have to have more kids. And so, but in the Indian reservation, which is true on strong family cultures, that the mother is going to dominate, she's going to have the children. Okay? So that means what? That means she owns the house. Okay? And the men have no say at all in where they're going to live or where they're going to, and they would go from house to house. And the women, the whole time we were there, and we would talk to them, and that woman has been in that house for a long time. The only time is when she has more children, she can go up to a larger house. But the guys just rotate through the reservation. Rotate. Just go through it, you know. Now, the two families that we worked with were together. They have been together their whole time. In other words, the men always got drunk. They got picked up by the BIA, got taken to detox. They spent 3 months in detox where they went through all this counseling, psychobabble counseling, and then as soon as they got done, they were put out on the street. They would go back home, usually have another child, and they would stay with and that. But the two men that we were close with were in the same house their whole time, but they still rotated through the circle from getting drunk, BIA, getting dried out, coming back. Now, why didn't the women ever get drunk? They never did. Not that I ever saw. And so it's because the women have responsibility. They've got children. They've got to take care of their house. It's their house. They get drunk and they go to the thing, and the BIA takes the kids as well, puts them in an institution. She loses her house, and then she has to start over, find a house, get her kids back, and go through that process. That's really painful, and they're not going to do it more than once. You know, and most of them are, the women we worked with, smart enough not to do it at all. They're not going, you know, they see it. They can figure it out. If I get drunk, I lose my house. I lose my kids and I lose my house. And then I got to go through the whole process of getting my kids back, and then getting a house, and then finding my husband wherever he ends up at, and then bringing him back, and then figuring out. So they didn't get drunk, and they just stayed in the house, and they had their kids, and the guys just go through the circle. Now you can go in inner city. I work down in inner city Chicago. You see the exact same thing. And when I was in the Indian reservation, I realized that this looks like an inner city. Okay? It looks like the inner city. But it's all because of government policy. Now, that is Thomas Sowell's point. In a nutshell, the government creates, at the end of slavery in the 19th century, 80% of black families were together with a father and a mother. Into the 19th century. So during World War I, black families are solid. They're more together than white families. And all of them are Republican. Okay? And what happened was the government, the Democrats realized we're going to lose the country. The Democrats are going to lose the country. The Progressives said the only way we're going to be able to, we've got to get black votes. They came to realize that we got to have black votes. And so what did they do? They bought the black vote. They dumped money. They started Social Security. They started welfare. They started and Thomas Sowell was saying basically one of the things he said in the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, boys didn't get in trouble because they were too busy. They were working. And he talked about himself, he'd go down and work for 40 cents an hour. And when you're working, you don't have time to get into trouble in that. What removed the teenage boys from the market of work is minimum wage laws. And minimum wage laws completely cut out the teenage worker because nobody wanted to pay, minimum wage to a boy that couldn't even do that. If you want to train somebody, you got to pay them enough to where you can afford to train them. Okay? So everything had to do with government policy, and I saw that on the Indian reservation as well. There's that. Now I want to go. When you look at scripture, you know, James talks about this. He says, talks about religion is not expressed. It's not just what you say. You can go around and you see that in these marches and everything. People going and shouting certain things, but when I listen to them and I watch them, what they're shouting has no meaning to me because they don't do anything like that. You think, well, they're for the rising up and elevation of the blacks or the minorities, but they're burning their houses down, they're burning their businesses down. So what does that mean? What does their speech mean if they're not even coming close to living it out? How do you say, I'm for this black man's right to raise himself out of the gutter and do something with his life, because that I'm going to burn his shop down? And so James addresses that. Pure and undefiled religion in the sight of God and the Father is this: visit the orphans and the widows in their distress and keep yourself uncontaminated by the world. And so, but what you're seeing is not an interest in widows and orphans and poor and minorities. What you're seeing is the contamination and corruption of the world system. That's what you're looking at. You know, and James continues with that. It addresses partiality. Do not hold your faith in a glorious Lord Jesus with an attitude of personal favoritism. If a man comes to you, now he's talking about the wealthy, but he addresses both. That if you say to the wealthy, if you say to a person, I'm partial to you, come and sit here, and he addressed that. He says, when you make distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil motive. When we make distinctions among ourselves, we are judges with evil motive. James is not, he doesn't treat this with kid gloves. If we're going to base our social environment and our worship and our church and everything based on external standards, what he calls partiality, based on anything, whether they're rich or whether they're poor. See, what happened in the Middle Ages is there's a pushback against monarchies. Okay, you have during the Middle Ages you have these monarchies and you have these social classes. It comes all the way, goes clear back to Asia where there's caste systems. And the reason, if you study the history of like India, the caste systems are based on race, and the darker skin in India are the older nations. Okay, what happened in India and the caste system is India was attacked numerous times over history by the Caucasians from the Arabs and the Persians and then the Chinese and the Mongolians. And so they put pressure on. So the black color goes to the south. And in northern eastern India, you have a mixture of Chinese. Northern western India, you have the Persian mixture of Arab and Persian. And so when you look at India, you have Persian and Arabic, and then you have Chinese, and in southern India, they're black. Okay? Now, so when they defeated Indian people, the conquering people made the blacker people servants to keep them because they defeated them. And so they made them into servants. And how they did that was a caste system. Okay? You have the same thing in Europe. So what happens, and you can, I went through Francis Schaeffer's film series on that, how where revolution comes from. Is what happens is you've got the poor and disenfranchised, or they are disenfranchised, they are poor. You know, they're pushing back against it, and so you have. Then Marx comes along and he says, look, change is the absolute. It's not righteousness is the absolute, love's not the absolute, but conflict and change are the absolute. Because the poor can turn around and rebel against the rich and turn it upside down. But then what happens then? Then your lighter skin becomes poor, and the darker skin becomes your upper class, and your lighter skin becomes your lower class. And so then what happens after a few hundred years? Then you flip it over again. And so Karl Marx come up with this philosophy of change, basically. Now, and so change is the absolute. So when you have a system that's been very old, the goal of your political system is to bring change. Now you hear this in their rhetoric all the time. For the last 16 years or more, we've heard change, 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 change. That's Marxism. Marxism. It's revolt against one class over another. Now, James says, look, if you're going to hold favoritism, and if you show partiality in judgment, you are committing sin and convicted as the laws of transgression. Whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles in one point is guilty. So, what you're seeing on the things that I've noticed, I've become really, I've been through so many riots and I really pay a whole lot of attention to them. But the reason why is, now all of these sports people that had shut down the protests in the sports arena now are apologizing for doing that. And now we're going to see sports come this year. We're going to have everybody on their knees. They're going to try to get the audience down on their knees, which means it's going to kill the sport. That's not going to happen. Okay, and so like Goodell, the big sports people, power brokers, and rich people are now. I was wrong in stopping the kneeling down and the protesting of the privilege of the white classes and the that. So what's going to happen is you're going to see the last couple of years you're going to see in overdrive this year. Now, and I saw that coming. You can't appease evil. You pay for it. You always will. Okay? And so that's what's going to happen. So I was the other, when this first hit the news, and I was watching the news, and I saw this criminal get arrested and being mistreated by the cop there, and he dies, and then I said, okay, here comes riots. Here. I mean, I saw that one clip and I go, and the reason was because the media had said, without any evidence whatsoever, before the coroner, before the evidence, before the judge, before the jury, before anybody, the media had already pronounced the cop a cop. And I said, that's all you need to take. They're going to run this. They're going to run this. Media is going to run this until the election. And I saw that the very first moment I saw that clip, the very first time, I said, this is going it's going right up to November. They're going to turn this into a black-white race thing, and it's going to be anti-Trump thing, and they're going to make this guy a cop killer without any trial, without any coroner's thing. Yeah, the cop is a killer, okay? And then the first coroner comes out, And the first coroner comes out and he says he died of heart failure. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that what the cop did was good. Don't get this confused. But there's, in the things that I've read recently, there were 19 black deaths last year by cops, and there were like 40-some white. I mean, I don't remember the exact numbers, but there were twice as many white people died in the hands of policemen than black people. And I say, but that's disproportionate because there's a whole lot. There's 70% white and only 20% black. So why is the numbers? Well, again, what is the issue? Is there a problem? Yeah, there is a problem. There's a problem. And I even today I looked at the blacks, the 4 cops that are going to be tried for murder. One's Spanish, one's Asian, and 2 are white. This is not about race, guys. Never has been, never will be. It's about power. It's about power. Okay? One of those cops is Spanish. One of them is Asian. 2 of them are white. Now, what's happened is our government has ruined the inner cities, has ruined the Indian reservations by design, by purpose, in order to gain power and votes and to keep people under that. Here, in 2016, probably 2015, 2014, somewhere in there, about a year and a half, 2 years before the election in 2016, I was just thumbing through the news and it said, Obama spends 1.5 billion or something like that, 1.6 billion in the swing states in order to help refugees that are coming in. And I had a knot in my stomach. I thought, oh no, here's FDR again. We're gonna spend money first of all, I've got 500 Nepalis in Twin Falls, and I said if they start spending money, what they're doing is dumping money in the swing states. And so I went over and I started talking to leaders in Twin Falls. I said, your people are going to get money to move to Ohio and stuff. I did this a year and a half before the election. A year and a half. As soon as Obama started dumping money in Ohio, Pennsylvania, I started warning the people in Twin Falls. This is what's going to happen. The people are going to want to move to Ohio. If they got a sick grandma or a sick person they're helping in the home, they are going to need more Medicaid money, more food stamps, more this, more that. People in Twin Falls started walking away from their house mortgages and their jobs. They said, I can get more money. Are you going to say, oh, no, I'm just going to abandon, I'm just going to leave it, I'm going to go to Ohio. Why? Do you have a grandma there? No. Do you have cousins there? No. Do you have friends there? No. Why you moved to Ohio? I can get my mother sick, my grandmother sick, and if I go to Ohio, they'll take care. She'll get Medicaid. I got one guy said, I've been looking for a bigger house. I can't find a bigger house. If I move to Ohio, they'll fund it, and I'll get a bigger house. But then, towards the election, there were riots in Columbus because there was one apartment open, and 500 refugees showed up for it. 500. What in the world were 500 people doing in the Rust Belt anyway? And they were mostly Muslim. What were 500 people doing there looking for one apartment? Because Obama dumped billions of dollars in Ohio and Pennsylvania. Then they advertised on it, we need people to move. You move here, we'll take care of you. And so they moved to Ohio. There wasn't even the room, there wasn't the apartments, there weren't the buildings for them. There weren't jobs, there were housing, there wasn't anything. But there was government money. So they started leaving. Half of the Nepali people in Twin Falls moved to Ohio. That's how this stuff starts. Now what do? Are they soon going to start forming gangs, Nepali gangs? No, they've already have gangs. That's already. It took them, they've only been here 12, 13 years, the Nepali have. It took them 13 years to start gangs. Now how do we get where we are with gangs? I can show you, got pictures of it. I've got pictures with gangs, guys with their tattoos all over in the Nepali homes that I went to. And nobody will believe this. Now, who created all that? Obama did. On purpose. For an election. For power. And and you can see the way they're treating the Nepali is exactly what they did with the blacks in 1920, 1930. So if you come to these cities, move into these cities, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll take care of you. We'll take care of your kids, we'll give you free schools. And so they fled into the big cities pretty soon. And then they needed more and more help. It was failing. The whole thing was failing. And so Johnson come along with his great new deal, and Johnson flooded, more money into the inner cities to draw votes from the minorities. Now every minority, not today, it's changing. It's actually swinging back the other direction. But in the Clinton-Obama years, the 16 years, Clinton-Obama, minorities voted almost exclusively Democrat. But they're starting to figure this out. That the government's killing them. Now so they were talking to conversation with Sowell, Thomas Sowell, was what's the solution? The solution is education counts. You're not going to get minorities in to raise their standard of living unless you can educate them. And two, you have to have fathers in the home. And I brought this topic up at camp, it lit a bomb, because the minorities just took it. He's attacking us. And I'm not attacking anybody. 70% of incarcerated young males are raised by their mother in a fatherless home. 70% of incarcerated males are raised. That's not my opinion. That's such an established fact. It's just a fact. But I'm not attacking single moms when they say that. But see, and here's the thing: you have to realize when the Africans came into the cities in the 1920s, they came as a father and a mother and children. But today, that's completely changed. The same thing is true of Hispanic people coming up out of Mexico. They came as families. They didn't come up here kids by themselves or women by themselves. They come up as mom and dad looking for work and their families. Now that's changing. There's a lot of the Hispanics following that blacks are getting put in prison. And so how do you turn it around? And this is what Thomas Sowell said, you have to have education. You have to get quality education. And here's what's happened. In New York City, the charter schools in downtown New York City, downtown, Hoboken, or was it in New York, the charter schools in the big cities just wipe the private schools and the big schools off the map with their test scores. It just killed them. So, and these are underprivileged, disenfranchised, inner city kids. When you take them out of public school and you put them in like a charter school or special school, they excel. Well, we would expect that. I mean, if you go to a school and your whole goal is to make it home alive in the afternoon, you're not going to be doing very well educationally, are you? That's if your goal today is I gotta get home without getting beat up and everything. And so they take them into charter schools. The thing about charter schools, then say, well, the thing is that charter schools are the cream of the crop. No, charter schools are lottery. They're lottery. All of them. It's a lottery system. First come, first serve, and they just pick. Now, so it wasn't the cream of the crop. It's that you just take kids and you put them in a safe environment and you teach them. Now, so what's the Democrats, and this interview with Thomas Sowell just happened, and this is what's happening. This is what you're going to see. This is what's coming next. The government owns the charter schools as well. So what the courts are doing is they're making the charter schools adhere to public school law. Once they do that, because that's why the public schools are the way they are, is because of the law. And who makes the law? The congressman. Why do Congress do stupid things like say you can't throw a drug dealer out of the school because there's nowhere for him to go, and you're being racist if you do that? No, you're not. You're actually being racist if you don't do it. But the charter schools, with all these black and Spanish kids, wiped out the test scores for New York City. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, charter schools need to obey the law. In other words, they can't kick out kids for drugs. They have to take everybody. They can't, So that's what you're going to see. So the solution is education and fathers. That's the solution. Is it going to be easy to get to? No. But we don't have a choice. You understand that? We don't have a choice. Those of you that are young and just starting out, you don't have a choice. If you want America the way it is, otherwise we're headed towards Venezuela. We keep going this way. Because that's their goal. Antifa and Black Lives Matter and other groups are funded by Marxist socialists in Europe, by Democrat socialists here in the United States are funded. And they're political organizations against the American Republic. They have a Marxist root, and they're basically, and I think they're spiritual. What happens when you have kids? When you have kids that are raised by parents and they're taught morals and they're taught responsibility and they're taught to take care of themselves and not depend on the government, what happens? And you teach them moral law and you teach them government. Well, you have revival. People get right with God. That's what happened in the 19th century. Millions and millions and millions of young people came to the Lord. And so if you really look at, to me, this is spiritual, isn't it? Why would people not want children to progress and be successful in their life? Why? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, and if you look at Trump, and it was kind of funny, Thomas Sowell said, you know, when Trump comes on, he said, Trump's a great leader, but when he comes on the television, I go as fast as I can to my clipper. I can't stand the look of him or to listen. And I understand that. But Sowell said he changed economics for the poor and the underclass more than any president in history. But he's not a likable God. And he said, I know that. But, and you say, why would anyone care? I mean, you know, Trump is not coming to this from a spiritual point of view. You know, God may have, no question to me, God has his hand on him. He's a guy, a billionaire playboy, you know, who owned a casino in Atlantic City. I mean, he didn't come in there for spiritual reasons. He came in there for economic reasons, and he's very clear about it. He knows if you destroy the economy, he can't run his casinos, he can't sell his hotels, he can't have people, he can't have people, you know, playing golf. I mean, it's you know, you saw that Las Vegas got right behind Trump. The same thing. If you don't have a healthy economy, you don't have people with lots of money to spend. And so they're all in economically. And people keep saying he's a racist, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever. You know, he's one of the first really wealthy people in casinos to bring blacks into his casinos, to bring Jews into his casinos. He has no interest. You know, he doesn't care. If you want to gamble at his casinos, you can be any color. He don't care. You know, there's nothing racist about it. But people, and I'm saying even Christians are bothered by him because because of his past and that, and I understand that. But so here we're talking about justice. What do we see when we kind of sum up things? And we could go into justice. You know, I'm going to read in Deuteronomy and Leviticus and that, the just wage. You cannot, and you see this in James here. You cannot, he says, if you show partiality, you are committing sin. You cannot have black justice. You can't have white justice. Once you change the weight on the scale, you violated the moral law, and you become unjust. Justice is to have the same scale. You can go to this to look at Deuteronomy. God's very clear. You know, you're supposed to keep your scale the same. If you see a guy come in that's friend and he's wealthy and he might donate to your running for office or whatever, and you change the scale for him, see that's what James is saying. That's not just. You have to have the exact same scale. If he's black, it's the same scale. If he's white, it's the same scale. Cannot have qualified justice. And that's what people want. So you're privileged, so you have a different scale than this guy has. And we've been running like that, and it's ruining our colleges, it's ruining our businesses, it's ruining our schools. Because you cannot qualify justice, can you? Think about it. Can you qualify justice? No, you can't. Now, I'm seeing the popular opinion is shifting towards the qualified justice. But qualified justice is not justice, it's injustice. Justice simply means to have the same scale for everybody. Now, usually, the scale is lightened for the rich. And that's why he keeps bringing it up. But if you read through, and I've pointed this out as we've gone through James, he's talking about it. What is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is it not your pleasure, your desires, which wage war in your members? You desire and you don't have, so you commit murder. You are envious, so you cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you don't ask. You don't receive it because you ask with wrong motives. You want to spend it on your desires. That the friendship with the world is hostility to God. Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. What's he talking about? Justice. Justice. We can't be friends with the world. And you can't have qualified justice, because once you qualify it, it's no longer justice. I could go another hour, we could read Romans 1 and go through that and see what all the different things in there. But where does injustice come from? And that's why I think it's spiritual. In Romans 1, injustice comes from not worshiping God. You don't worship God. You're not thankful that God gives you. This country is given to us by God. Because the people who were here before us were unjust to themselves. And I say that having Cherokee. Not, okay? The American Indians were not on good shape. I mean, Europeans created cities and that. The Native Americans started to create cities and build and that. But when they started creating cities, they built temples and they started eating each other. God gave this land to somebody else. Europeans. Now, but see, you had Indians mistreated by the Europeans? Yes, you did. Just like you have now. We're not perfect. You can't have, you can't look at anything and find a perfect root. Certainly not by making change and revolution your absolute. What is the absolute anyway? It's God, but what does God stand for? What is his absolute stand for you? He said, this thing I require of you, only 3 things I require of you. Love justice. Do justice, love mercy. But justice to be just, it has to be the same for everybody. And I tell this, when I'm talking about church growth and church ministry, you cannot do ministry with the blessing and power of the Holy Spirit unless you do it his way. And the only way you can do it God's way is, I don't want to say blind to people, but because that's not what it is. You have to love people. You have to love everybody. Why? Because God does. Because God does. So if I have the love of God shed in my heart by the Holy Spirit, then I should love like God because it's his love that's in me, isn't it? Isn't that what it is? Is it our love or is it his love? His love. He loves everybody. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made us, right? Wouldn't have made us the way we are if he didn't love us the way we are. He does. And so I do too, but so if we could go through that and look at the that from that. But it starts with worship. Why does it start with worship? Because if you look at the world and you look at people, you look at power and you look at rulers and that, then remember the rule. We become like what we worship. And if we worship the world and we worship politics and we worship power, then we're going to become greedy and selfish and mean. That's how we worship. So justice has to be built on worship. And the founding fathers knew that. They said, you will not be able to keep a republic unless you serve Jesus. Unless you really know the Bible. You're going to live the Bible. Justice has to be based on our worship. Because if we honestly think that they're built into society, there are groups of people that have more value than other groups of people, then you're going to be corrupt. And you're going to be sinful and corrupt. But how do we get by that? First of all, we worship God. He becomes our focal point. We worship Him. We look to Jesus as the author and finisher of our faith. When we're looking to Jesus, we don't look here at the influence and we become partial. We become influenced by other people and that. And so when I watch riots and people burning down, I go, well, I have to change my worldview because people are rioting. Well, what kind of worldview is that? You have to change it because people are rioting. You know? Does justice change because people are burning stores down, looting? Does justice change because of that? No, it doesn't. So how do you get people to stop looking at the world and being influenced by it? Worship Jesus. Worship Him. Put your eyes on Jesus. You know? So that Paul starts that way. He says, we don't worship God, and so we come up with all this foolish philosophy, and we worship the creature and itself, and then it just goes and goes and goes and goes worse and worse and worse until finally we destroy it. We become anarchists. We just destroy our lives. And that's exactly what you're seeing. But so what's the solution? Well, to start with, we have to worship God. You're not going to cannot keep, and this is from, the founding fathers of this country. You cannot keep a republic unless you are focused on Jesus. They knew that, and they said it. George Washington said it, that they won't be able to keep it. Why? Why did they say they wouldn't? Because in this it's a government, like Lincoln said, it's a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. But once you get your eyes off of Jesus, it's going to be the government by the rich and powerful, for the rich and powerful. You understand me? And then what happens? Then people revolt. Because that's where revolution comes from. Revolution comes from the poor trying to overthrow the rich. And it just flips over, and then it becomes again. So revolt becomes your standard of worship. That's what you worship. And you can hear it in their conversation, in their speech. Change, 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 change. Okay. Father, I just want to pray for America. And I pray for the leaders of America. I pray for these riots. I pray that kids would become bored with it, and that young people would begin to seek you. Their eyes would be focused on you, God. That we would repent from the sin of worshiping the state. Because when we give our children to the state and say they can raise our children, they can do a better job with our children, we are committing sin. None of that's true. And I pray, God, that you would you'd bring about a great revival, a great move of your Spirit in America today, and heal this land.
You want to stand up? We're going to sing a hymn on page 447 if you want to look at your hymn book. That's all, we'll have it up there. We are living, we are dwelling. Lord, we just pray that you would be with us as we go out into the world, that we would tell for God, that we would stand up for God, that we would be his soldiers, that we would be his arm, and that we would pray and follow Jesus.
So how's life treating you? Smile. Yeah, I can.
I am too. You want to put some water?
Yeah.